Welcome to the Dominion Renaissance projects tier list. So there's no events in Renaissance, but there are these 20 project cards, and so we're going to be ranking them. And just in case you're not aware, projects are very good. They're also kind of tricky to tell apart if you haven't played with them a lot. I'll do my best. Um, well, let's just go ahead and get started. It's pretty much universally agreed. Road Network is the worst project, but I'm going to put it in C tier. I don't think it's all that bad. Particularly in multiplayer games, Road Network can be pretty strong when everyone's buying green cards, but I'm mostly looking at two-player here. And yeah, really, it's not a multiplayer ranking. In two-player, it's still all right. Like if you think a game is going to start going into a greening phase pretty soon, it could be worth it to spend 5 to buy Road Network and draw 2 cards every time somebody. Is it 2 cards or 1 card? I can't remember. I just want to check it out. Hang on. 1 card. It's only 1 card. Yeah. Okay. You only draw 1 card. It's still decent enough, though. I mean, like any extra card you can get in your hand, especially late game when draws can get more inconsistent. Then when you're greening, then yeah, Road Network is pretty all right. But I think most of the time it's just going to be okay. You probably will totally ignore it on a bunch of boards. It's just relevant on the boards where you would get green cards mid to late game. Also alternate victory cards, I guess, can matter, but I find that I very infrequently get Road Network because of those. Maybe usually because if they're important, I'm buying those instead. Next up is Fair. I want to make sure that I got this is Fair, I believe. And Fair, I'm just going to go ahead and jump us right up to the B tier. Fair is fine. It's a 4-coin project. Once you get it, you have an extra buy for the rest of the game. And that's not bad. Having an extra buy. I mean, there you go. It's probably the simplest project. There's not a whole lot to it. The only thing that's really complex is kind of figuring out when you want to get it. You don't want to get it too early unless you've got something cheap you're trying to get a lot of. You probably want to time the buy just sometime in the mid game when you've got an extra buy to spend on something. It's kind of like the $11 Herbalist purchase, but yeah, it's not too bad having to throw away 1 buy to get Fair, honestly. It's usually not going to hurt you too much. And yeah, you get that buy for the rest of the game, and sometimes it's the only buy. So yeah, it's pretty all right. Next is City Gate. And yeah, here's the first one. Okay, where I'm having trouble finding it. City Gate, pretty decent. Basically, at the start of your turn, you draw a card, and then you put a card back. It just lets you scout ahead a card, basically. And, that can combo with some stuff. It can smooth out your draws a little bit. This only costs 3 to get, and you have it for the rest of the game. So that's one of the nicest things about it, honestly, is that it's inexpensive. It very rarely has a huge impact on the game, but I think it is overall nice. Like you're never really upset that you have it unless it's making you get a bad reshuffle or something along those lines. So yeah, overall, it's pretty solid. Pretty solid. Oh, wait, isn't there a thing where if you have the minus card token, it screws you over with this? I'm trying to remember. I think there is, but it's pretty minor. It doesn't come up a whole lot. And basically just don't buy Citygate in that situation. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, you almost always want to have it, but it's not incredible. And geez, are we already up to A tier? No, I think I'm going to put this one at B tier, and that's Piazza, as long as I can find it. Yeah, this is Piazza. Basically, it's like playing a Herald at the start of every turn. Well, you don't get the plus action, but yeah, it tries to play the card at the top of your deck if it's an action. Otherwise, it does nothing. I have terrible luck with this card. I just find whenever I get it, I almost never hit actions. But if you've got very high action density, it should be firing off most turns when you have gotten this project. So, I mean, it's pretty good overall. I mean, it's not earth-shatteringly good, but it's always nice to have consistency in Dominion, and Piazza's a way to do it. So yeah, like overall, it's pretty solid. If it's your only village, it probably isn't worth it as a village, but as a supplement to lots of other engines, I think it's very strong. And you should almost always get it if you have action density. Next in the B tier, we have Barracks. B is for Barracks. Basically, you just get an extra plus action at the start of every turn. So it's like playing, a single village every turn. which is all right. Cost of 6 is kind of high, and that can make timing this purchase a little bit tricky, but it's one of those things where if you need it, you're going to get it. You're willing to give up that purchase for it. But yeah, I mean, that's really the only bad thing I can say about it, other than, being limited to only one extra action. It's nicer as a supplement, but it's good with cards that really need to kick off a chain, like Torturer or something like that, to be amazing. Yeah, it's nice for making sure that you can set those off without having to worry too much. Overall, good, but I think maybe like a little underwhelming some of the time. Still, having one extra action, I mean, that can be fairly significant, I think. I mean, it's the difference between playing a single terminal board and not playing one. So, yeah, nothing to sneeze at here, but also not incredible. B tier. Next is going to be Fleet, which I believe this is Fleet. Probably the worst extra turn card in the game, but I don't know, still relevant. Fleet is really more of a threat than anything else. You're saying you can't just empty piles and win with one victory point because I've got this fleet, right? And I can mess you up. That's probably the most significant thing that Fleet does, is basically it prevents an early pile out. On the other hand, it might not do that. Fleet is very often insignificant in games that go to provinces or just like some kind of normal in condition where like you were either winning anyway and didn't need the fleet, or you actually can't catch up because the provinces are gone. More often than not, that's what happens with Fleet. But yeah, like I said, it's best, I think, when you're using it as a threat for someone who's close to being able to end piles. Getting this extra turn can make a pretty big difference. The only thing is, when Fleet's important, everyone who's playing the game is going to buy it. So it's almost insignificant in a weird way. It just kind of self-regulates to doing nothing a lot of the time. Still, like, the potential is there for it to matter a lot. I just think, like, a lot of the times it doesn't matter if you have those extra turns at the end of the game. So, yeah, B tier. I can't really give it lower than that. It's an extra turn card, but yeah, not incredible. Next is Guildhall. I sure hope this is Guildhall. I think it is. Guildhall gives you a coin token every time you get a treasure. And in games where you're getting a lot of treasure, this is obviously very good. You got your cards like Masterpiece and Merchant Guild. They can make this kind of ridiculous. And there are some other combos that are just kind of escaping me at the moment. But yeah, there you go. I mean, if you gain treasures a lot, then Guildhall good. If you're not gaining lots of treasures, then Guildhall is ignored. And that's just how it is. It's very bipolar, right? Like, it's either going to be amazing and you got to get it right away, or it's just going to be all right, or completely useless, honestly. But I can't rightfully say it's worse than B tier, because it's very significant in those games where you're gaining the tokens, especially now that you can spend tokens at any point in your turn, which is one of the newest erratas. So yeah, that can affect several cards. Like Storyteller is a big one there. So yeah, Guildhall, pretty good overall. It's a nice combo with where is it, Sculptor, which is in this set. Yeah, I'm not seeing it, but it's in here, among other things. All right. Now we're going to jump up to the A tier, I believe, and we'll start with Canal. So Canal costs 7, which is a lot, but it reduces the cost of everything in the kingdom for 1 for the rest of the game for you. This can mess up you trying to trash your coppers with upgrade, but other than that, this is overall very strong. Like, if you don't have any buys, you can treat it like you're getting plus coin every turn, which is decently strong. But if you have extra buys, that means everything is actually like reduced in price. So yeah, it's like you're getting more than 1 coin every turn. Yeah, the more buys you have, the better Canal is. Yeah, there are also some other things that are relevant about it, but geez, I can't even get into it all off the top of my head. Sorry. But yeah, like the most significant thing is just that it makes stuff easier to get. Okay. And the more buys you have, the better it is. And you really can't ignore it when that's relevant. One thing I have to mention with Canal is that with any card that gains cards that cost up to a certain price point, Canal becomes really, really important. For instance, a workshop can now gain cards that would normally cost 5. And And obviously, this could be done with any price reduction card, but Canal allows you to not have to play any cards in advance to get that effect. So that's very, very significant. It can also do things like affect, attacks that hit stuff that costs 3 to 6. You know, every now and then, that's super relevant, and you can't ignore it. So yeah, it has to be in the A tier, I think, just because when it does have an effect on the game, it's pretty darn significant. I could see B tier, but yeah, this is where I'm going to put it. Next up is Innovation. Innovation's a really, really weird project. It basically makes it so the first action that you gain in a turn, you can play immediately. There are some cards that make this amazing, particularly duration cards, attacks, I don't know, thinners when you got something in your hand worth thinning. I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff that you want to play right away when you get it. And especially if you have a gainer like Inventor here, and you can gain stuff mid-turn and play it right away, Innovation can be pretty broken. Unfortunately, there are also a lot of kingdoms where Innovation just doesn't do anything. And it's basically just bad luck of the draw when that happens. Most of the time, it's at least pretty good. So the interesting thing about Innovation is actually the question of whether you should buy it or not, like whether it's worth the opportunity cost of hitting that 6 and buying this instead of an action card. And really, that's probably the most relevant thing about it. It just kind of adds that puzzle to the game. Once you have it, it's very strong. So yeah, no complaints here. Certainly an A tier card. But I think not completely broken because there is a little bit of awkwardness with the timing of the purchase and all that. So I forgot to list Capitalism earlier in this in this ranking, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. Yeah, Capitalism, I think it's B tier. It's ranked as the second worst project on Thunder Dominion, which I'm not 100% sure I agree with, but we're just going to go with it. And I do think it is a B tier project for what it's worth. I think this card seems a whole lot crazier than it actually is when you play a bunch of games with it and you start noticing like a lot of the times it's just kind of mediocre. But what it does is it turns any action card that has plus coin written on it into a treasure card. And sometimes this is like having a champion in your deck. Oftentimes this is just very, very mediocre. Like there are a lot of cards that are not particularly notable to have in your buy phase at all. There are some cards that make this pretty good. None of them are. This is the thing. Like barely any of them are hitting me at the top of my head, because as it turns out, like this effect is just kind of mediocre. Pirate Ship is one of the cards that got the most out of this, I think. And Pirate Ship becomes pretty deadly with Capitalism in the kingdom, but it also kind of self-balances because the other player can do the same thing, and so it just kind of becomes stupid, like Pirate Ship games already were. So yeah, I mean, I don't think Capitalism is incredible. I think it's definitely a case of something that looks much wackier than it is in practice. Like the games are certainly wacky, but I think as a power card, I don't know if I would call it that. It does twist the game a little bit, but it's not that amazing in the end. So the next card is Star Chart, which is also A tier, but it's significantly worse than people thought it was. Like when this set came out, I thought Star Chart was full stop the best card in the set. And I was very wrong about that. It seems great on paper. At just the cost of 3, every shuffle you can decide a card to go on top of the shuffle, and you're guaranteed to draw it. And that's not bad, but man, it's actually a bigger opportunity cost than you think, because it's something you want to get early in the game to get a lot of uses out of it. But if you get it, you're passing up buying something that could really help you excel your deck, right? Like even if you pass up silver or something, I mean, that's a potential 5 cost you're missing the purchase of early in the game. And so the timing of buying Star Chart is actually a little bit complicated a lot of the time. And I think that's the thing that hurts it the most. Like it's never something you're sad to pick up, really, but timing that pickup is difficult. And that's why I have to give it A tier here. I really don't think it's an S tier card. I think I end up skipping it a lot more than I thought I was going to when the set come out. And then sometimes it's just a little insignificant. Like you were going to buy that, you were going to get that card in your shuffle anyway. And all this did was just kind of tweak the odds a little bit in your favor. So yeah, I think it's not really as significant as you might be inclined to believe when you first start playing with this set. Next is exploration. Exploration's pretty good. What does it cost? 4? I believe it costs 4. Yeah, and basically, if you don't buy any cards this turn, you get a villager and a coffer. Not great as the only village in the kingdom, although not always a terrible plan there. Villagers, like even if you're just getting one villager, that's pretty darn good. And coffers are nice to have. It's nice to get that trade-off for not buying anything. But really, the villager is the star here, I think. There are some ways you can combo with this, like with events and stuff like that, or just only using gainers, where you can kind of rack up those exploration points. Those kinds of games happen, but I think most of the time it's just every now and then you're happy to trade a buy just to get a villager instead of some card like silver, right? And yeah, I mean, that's pretty significant there. It can have a pretty big impact on the game. Even if you're just getting like 1 or 2 villagers, like games with Renaissance cards tend to move really fast. So just a couple of villagers can make a pretty big difference. And yeah, Seaway is one way to get them. Pretty strong. Although not like a game breaker, I don't think. Did I call it Seaway? Sorry, I meant Exploration. A lot of these cards just kind of have similar names. All right, next on our list is Pageant. Pageant's pretty darn good, okay? 3 coins. You pick up this thing that lets you spend an unspent coin at the end of your turn to get a coffer. This is a really nice way to rack up coffers. I mean, when you think about it, there are all kinds of turns where you don't spend all of your money. And yeah, this is a really good bonus for those turns. Not much to say about it. It's good to open it to rack up coffers throughout the game. It's really nice in money decks because like in money decks where you're just buying 1 card every turn, you'll very frequently hit, 7 or something like that. And you really would love to have that extra coffer. Yeah, Pageant's very good in those games, but it's good in just about any game as well. It's as with most projects, it's just a question of when to buy it. And I personally think like between turns 1 and 4, but after that, I mean, if you've got a turn where you don't need anything else, it's also a good purchase later on too. Like you never know when like 1 or 2 coffers can decide a game for you, but it does happen pretty frequently. Not too much to say about it. It's pretty simple, I think. Next is Silos. Silos is a really strong card. I don't think it's like super game warping, although I don't know. I'm looking at the stuff above it, and yeah, it's between A and S. That's for sure. Like I think if I had an A plus, I'd maybe put it there. Geez, I gotta put it in S. Yeah, Silos it does have a pretty big impact on the game. Okay, only costs 4, which means you can open with it always. And I think like even with a 5/2, Silos isn't a terrible purchase. Maybe in 5/2 it's a little iffy. So what it does is it lets you discard as many coppers as you want and then draw that many cards. Basically like opening with Seller that can only discard coppers. But yeah, don't be fooled. That's really good. Obviously, you'd rather discard the estates, and that would be strong, but that's not what Silos does. But it lets you search a lot of cards. Let's say you have like a 4 copper hand. I mean, you can draw 4 more cards there and like dig through your deck quite a bit. Now, of course, you want to be thinning your coppers, but let's face it, like early in the game, you've got extra coppers. And this is a good way to make use of them because they really don't give you that much coin. It's more valuable to play your power cards more frequently. So yeah, like Silos is almost always a good purchase, I think. I could definitely see it being in the A tier, but I'm comfortable enough putting it in S tier. I think I virtually always get it when it's in a kingdom. If not an opening, then usually like turn 3 or 4 to make sure that I get the most I can out of it. You want to get it as early as possible because that's when you have coppers, especially if there's no way to thin coppers. Well, one nice thing about it is you can forego thinning coppers with Silos because, well, you've got this little benefit at the start of your turn. And yeah, it's pretty strong. And at the end of the day, that's what there is to say about projects. They're very, very strong cards. Next is Crop Rotation, which, yeah, I would also put in the S tier. This is a terrible cropped image of it, by the way. But yeah, it lets you discard a victory card and then draw 2 cards at the start of your turn. And that's just so good, okay? I mean, think of it this way. Like, if that if that was a dead victory card anyway, it's basically +2 cards. Like, I mean, obviously, you're discarding, so it's really just +1. But come on, it was a useless card, right? So you're actually drawing 2, and so yeah, very very nice. It's kind of like having a wharf every turn, as long as you draw those victory cards. If you twist it a little, it's not a perfect comparison, but I mean, there you go. Extra cards in hand, always good. It costs 6, which is a little problematic, but it's not too hard to hit. And I think if this card's going to be relevant, you should make it your first purchase at 6, because yeah, it will pay off throughout the game. I mean, there's very few boards where you don't want it. Just kicking off that turn every time you have a victory card in hand is so nice that yeah, it's pretty hard to ignore this card. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say. I guess it does have a massive impact on the game. So yeah, S tier. I agree with myself, and I agree with the voters who put it here. So yeah, look at this. Everything else is in S tier. What's with that? There's no surprises left. Yeah. Next is Sewers. Sewers lets you trash an extra card whenever you trash a card, and of course that's just silly. I mean, yeah, it's just silly. It's just silly. You get to trash an extra card. Obviously, if you can't trash, then Sewers doesn't do anything, but who cares? Thinning an extra card is great. Yeah, not much else to say about it. It only costs 3, so it's a must buy if you have another thinner you can open with. Think of it this way. Like, you know how Steward only trashes 2 cards? Well, now it trashes 3, right? I mean, any card, like a Forager that only trashes 1, now it trashes 2. That's totally worth it. It's totally worth it. I don't have anything else to say about it. It's really good. It can also combo with cards. There can be some weird stuff like if a Swindler hits you, you can then trash a card and get something out of it. So it can be a defensive measure as well. Yeah, just overall really strong. Also pretty simple. Next is Citadel. So probably the most significant thing with Citadel is it costs 8. And so that means like you often can't get it right away. You have to wait a little bit. But it lets you throw the first action you play every turn. And yeah, that's just really, really good. It's totally worth it most of the time. Yeah, this card is great. I don't have too much to say about it. Like almost any action card is worth throwing. Right, and you kick off with, say, a lab. Well, now it's +4 cards, +2 actions. Wow, amazing, right? And there's so many other cards that you could say that about too. Yeah, virtually always good if you were playing actions, which you should be. There's sometimes it can be a little awkward, like if the action you have to start with isn't great, but whatever. It's still S tier. Next is going to be Sinister Plot. Sinister Plot, one of the more complex ones, I guess, but basically, yeah, it only costs 4, and then at the start of every turn from now on, you either put a card on the mat, or is it on the card, I guess, or you take them off and draw that many cards. So you can basically build up a caravan stack, or you can take the caravan stack. And I think, personally, I try to take the draw as much as I can, but really, the thing I would recommend about it, if you're not sure, is just do what feels good, right? If you feel like you need an extra card this turn, then be greedy with it. Don't sit there waiting for a miracle, right? Take what you can get now. That's what I would say with Sinister Plot. If you've got enough coin in your hand, then yeah, sure, save the plot tokens. Because, if you can build up 4 or 5 tokens, you can get a mega turn later in the game. And, that can be pretty nice too. It's very flexible in that way. Flexibility is, of course, good. And draw is good. Therefore, Sinister Plot is good. But, what's even better than that is Academy. Academy is just plain stupid. Only costs 5, and you should probably buy it as the first 5 in Kingdoms where it's good. Every time you get an action, you get a villager. It's basically like having unlimited action plays. Because, yeah, it just speeds your deck up so much, being able to play as many actions as you want, as long as you continue to gain actions. And with any gainer, like, this is amazing. Some gainers just make it completely bonkers ridiculous, but yeah, I think most of the time, yeah, Academy is just like completely absurd. The only time it's not great is if you're playing a money game, and in those cases you can ignore it safely. But you really shouldn't be ignoring it, because when it's there, it makes like so many things possible. Yeah. Basically, the thing to look out for: any gainer in the kingdom that can gain actions makes Academy probably worth your while. Any draw, of course, makes it insanely good. Yeah, very, very good card. Number one is Cathedral. Cathedral lets you trash a card at the start of every turn. Only costs 3, so it's, of course, completely ridiculous. The drawback is that you have to trash a card every turn, and so you're playing with a 4-card hand, and you might have to trash something good. But so what? It puts your deck on super fuel. Not too much to say there. It makes games super, super fast, and it can be very difficult when you're not that experienced with the game, and people can understandably be afraid of this card. But suffice to say, it's very, very strong. Really, the only times you should be avoiding Cathedral are if you've got better trashing in the kingdom, which basically means like Donate or Chapel. One of the Recruiter, maybe, like some of the really, really good trashers. Or if your opponent is going to be playing a lot of hand size attacks and you're not going to be able to keep junk in your hand throughout the game. Even then, like sometimes it's still worth getting Cathedral. And it just makes games escalate so quickly. It's very easy to overlook how strong like consistent thinning is. A perfect example is Goat from Nocturne. That can like invalidate like a whole lot of other trashers because it's so strong just already having a trasher in your deck from the beginning. But yeah, Cathedral, I don't know, man. It's pretty sick. It's pretty sick. Yeah, 4 card hands do suck, but you learn how to live with them when it comes to this card. And I won't lie, there have been times I've lost because of Cathedral. I think another thing you have to watch out for is you really want to have a gainer of some kind. Like you need to be gaining an extra card per turn to make Cathedral amazing. Because sometimes you'll end up in cases where you have to trash one of your victory cards late in the game. You got to trash something that's really good. But still, I think like if you're an experienced enough player, you're going to see that coming, and you're still going to get Cathedral and be prepared for that eventuality. So yeah, I think like there's no denying like it's so strong that even with its drawbacks, it's probably the best of the projects. And yeah, I agree with it being number one. And that's about all I have to say about the projects. Renaissance, probably the most broken set in Dominion, in my opinion, just in terms of sheer power level of the cards. And projects are like one of the big reasons for this. But when we get to the cards, you'll see as well that a whole bunch of them belong in the S tier. So yeah, that's about all I have to say about the projects. Hope you enjoyed. I'll be back soon with, oh God, what's next? Prosperity. That's the one. See you then.